Hi, this is John Galan. Today I'm going to show you how to call the Azure REST APIs from Postman. The Azure REST APIs are very well documented on the Azure REST API reference site. You can find that by searching for Azure REST API. The first page here brings you through how to create your Azure Active Directory application that is used to authenticate with the Azure REST APIs. The Azure REST APIs require an authorization header that is set to the bearer token returned from the Azure Active Directory authentication call. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to call the Azure IoT Hub resource provider to get the IoT hubs in a subscription. The details of that REST API can be found under the IoT Hub section and resource provider. We're interested in the list by subscription call, which is just a GET request to this URL, which will return the IoT hubs in JSON format. If you were to land just on this page, you would see that an API version is required and a subscription ID is required. It does not tell you right here that an authorization header is required, but that could be assumed for all Azure REST APIs. So here are the details of the two requests that we're going to make. The first request will be to Azure Active Directory to get the bearer token needed to make subsequent Azure REST API requests. The second request is going to use that bearer token to get the IoT hubs in a subscription. The variables we need to make these calls are tenant ID, client ID, client secret, and subscription ID. Now let's go into the Azure portal and I'll show you how to get each of those. We're going to start with tenant ID. So open up the Azure portal, just portal.azure.com, click on Azure Active Directory, and then click on Properties. The directory ID listed here will be your tenant ID. Now we need a client ID and a client secret. A client ID is an ID of an Azure Active Directory app, and the client secret is a key that you give that app. So click on App Registrations to create a new app, click Add, give it a name, select Native, and enter any URI. Then click Create. Click on the app you just created. Application ID here is the client ID. Now we need a client secret. So let's click on Keys, give the key a name, select Never Expires, and then click Save. Copy this value into client secret. Now in the body, we're going to need grant type, client ID, client secret, and resource. Grant type will always be client credentials, and resource will always be HTTPS management.azure.com, and the ending / is required. We're then going to set up a test that sets a Postman environment variable called bearer token that will pull the access token from that JSON response, which can be used in subsequent requests. Then what you need to do is give your Azure Active Directory application access to your subscription. So go to your subscription and click on Access Control, and then click Add. The role is going to be Contributor, and we're going to search for your app. We called it Postman, click Select, and we're going to click OK. Now your application has access to your subscription, so when we make REST API calls, it can be done on behalf of your application instead of a user. While we're in the Azure portal, let's grab the subscription ID as well. So back to the portal, click on Subscriptions, click on your subscription, and then copy this ID. As part of that request, we're going to set an authorization header, which is equal to the bearer token that was returned from the first request, and we're just going to check if there's any response. Now let's go into Postman and start making some requests. The first thing you're going to want to do is create a new environment. So click on the gears icon, click Manage Environments, click Add, and give your environment a name. This is going to store all the values that we just collected. So give it a name, click Bulk Edit, and you can copy the values here that we created. We're going to need tenant ID. We're going to need these 4 values. Click Key Value Edit, and you'll see now that we have an environment with these 5 variables: tenant ID, grant type, client ID, client secret, and resource. Click Add, and then close out of Manage Environments. And then select your environment. We named it John Galan Blog. Okay, so now let's make that first request. It's going to be a post to this URL. Tenant ID is going to be a parameter in that URL, and that's going to be equal to the tenant ID environment variable. And you can see what that is by clicking on the eye icon up here. We're then going to add the body parameters. And again here we can click bulk edit and copy. Instead of the values, we're just going to use the parameters from the environment. So now when you click key value edit, you'll see those 4 parameters in your body: grant type, client ID, client secret, and resource. Now we're going to add the test. Once again, this test will set a Postman environment variable to bearer token, which will be used in the next request. So let's click send. As you can see, an access token was returned. In our test, we are saying json.accessToken and set that to a bearer token. It's going to set it to an environment variable, which you can see by clicking on the eye icon. You can see now that the bearer token is stored in an environment variable. So now we're going to use that in our next request. So let's save this first. Click save. We're going to call this get AD token. I'm going to create a new collection. Click save. Great. So we're going to create a new request. It's going to be a get request to this URL. Again, if we click on params, we'll see that subscription ID is there. So we're going to pull that from environment variables as well. Here we're going to click on the eye icon, click edit, click bulk edit, and then add that here. So now when we make that request, it'll pull the subscription ID from the environment variable. Okay, so now we set the authorization header to bearer and then pull the bearer token from the environment variable. Then we're going to set up a test to see if we got a response. And then we're going to click send. And you can see down in the response that we have the details of the IoT hub that I created earlier. So in review, we want to call the Azure REST API endpoints. We need an Azure Active Directory bearer token to do so. We need to do an HTTP post to this URL, get a bearer token back, and then use that in subsequent requests. Please let me know if you have any questions or run into any issues along the way. Take care.